Welcome back to another Reaper blog tutorial. Reaper 7.70 just came out, along with 7.71 just after it. And in this update, there are some small changes to the default theme, some great new changes to sample editing and automation and mouse modifiers, and much more. Let's take a look. So first we'll talk about the default theme. Update to use Inter as default font on all platforms. Preferences. Add option in general advanced settings to globally adjust theme font, ruler, item, label, font sizes. So as you open Reaper 7.71, you will see a few things changed in the default theme if you're using the default theme, and a few things that would change regardless of which theme you're using. Mainly changes to the fonts. So the default font was Calibre. Now it is Inter, and it should be the same font on all systems. One of the things that I noticed personally when I loaded up this update for the first time is that a lot of my toolbar buttons, the labels got larger text. Some of the sort of abbreviations that are automatically put in there have changed as well. These things here, the grid menu buttons, item properties, SWS loop, those buttons that I added to my toolbar, gave them labels. The labels are a little thicker, but easier to read. So let's give this track a title like, oh, spelled it wrong. There we go. So this is what the default theme looks like with the Inter font, and here it is in the mixer as well. So let's talk about some ways that we can change the font size. We're going to go to the options menu, go to themes, and then theme adjuster color controls. Inside here, you can't change all of the font sizes, but there are a few that I think probably goes under the radar a little bit. So we're going to go to the track controls. There's a font size if we scroll down here to track panel, and there's the label font size. So I've got this on kind of the second smallest, but we can bump this up using the arrows, and so that's the maximum size. Input name here. You can choose that size as well. And those changes that I just showed you here for the track panel and the input selector name, those are a per layout change. Going to the envelope controls page, we've got a control for the label size. So if we open up the volume envelope, here we can have this label here, and we can change the size of that, make it a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger. These are a fairly subtle change, and then all these changes get saved with your theme. Now for the mixer controls, this is the sizes are here in the mixer panel section. And so we can change the label size. That's the track name, track label. Oh, and the transport can also be changed on the transport page. So we've got the same sort of interface there. Oh, I was looking at the status bar, but it's actually the selection area, which is right here. And yeah, so that's the largest. So beyond that, if we want to make any other changes, we'll go to the action list and search for theme tweak and theme development, show theme tweak configuration window. And if we search for font, we have all of the Walter fonts available, which is the kind of the coding language for Reaper themes. And we can do things like change the timeline font, transport status font, and just clicking, it'll bring up the font name. Calibre is the old default theme font that was generally used everywhere. It's only used in the transport area because it does not, it's a kind of a fixed width font. You can try changing this, and that will change that. Really just changing this area here. Calibre is the default one. And all the other areas use Inter, and we can try changing that. It doesn't always make that better, but within reason, you can kind of change that size. All right, and the last new place that you can change your fonts is under Preferences, General, Advanced UI System Tweaks. And we've got this font size adjustment for themes, arrange, ruler, is set to 1.0. By default, we could set this to 1.25. and that's going to kind of scale everything up, or 0.8, just slightly smaller, or just bring that back to 1 to kind of reset things to where they should be. Sample editing. Add support for per take sample edit envelopes, enabled via right-click take settings submenu. Add dedicated mouse modifier context. Add right-click menu action to delete sample edits, set sample values to within time selection. Add right-click menu action to set samples to a straight line within time selection. Support scaling sample edits within time selection. Sample editing is generally considered to be a destructive process. Sample editing as in getting in there and modifying individual sample values, on that sort of sample-based timescale, zooming super close and changing the values. Reaper does this in a non-destructive way. So we're going to right-click, we're going to the Take menu, Take Envelope section, we've got Take Sample Edits, only editable when zoomed in. And so this becomes editable once we zoom in here. So we can just start dragging these sample values from -1 up to +1, and we can start manipulating this. And if a recording pops on the very first sample, you can do something like that to kind of even that out. You can you can draw in wacky waveforms if you want. Fixing clicks and pops is the main use for it. Kind of take off a spiky edge of something. So there's a few new mouse modifiers for this. By simply clicking on a sample point, the mouse cursor should change to a pencil shape, and then you can click and drag to change any of those sample values. We can hold down the Option key or Alt, and that will return those sample values to the original position. We can also bring something down to the center line, effectively muting it using Alt plus Shift key. So returning it back to the default, just like that, and muting it like that. Pretty cool stuff. Let me show you the mouse modifiers. In the context, we're going to go to Sample Edit, and we just have left drag. So draw sample edit, delete sample edit, set sample value to 0, and those 3 options are pre-configured for kind of your basic thing, but you can always add, holding Shift, you can add something. So once we have some edits here, we can right-click on any of the points, not in the sort of space between, but if you're on the line, it should bring up this short menu. Delete sample edit, set sample value to 0, delete sample edits in time selection, set sample values to 0 in time selection, set sample values to a straight line in time selection, scale sample values in time selection, and then hide sample edits, disabling that. We can clear it for this channel or clear it for all channels. So if you didn't notice there, as I'm editing this, it is independent for left and right channels or multi-channel, and we can reset everything by doing that. Let's undo. Or we can scale the values. And so you can see that as I drag, it actually expands or compresses those edits kind of around the center point, which is pretty neat. Let's do the same here. Or we can select a small area and then set it to a straight line. Oops. Let's try that there. And we can also set them back to 0, muting that area, or deleting the sample edit, bringing it back to default. Pretty cool stuff and easy to use because it basically disappears when you're not at that kind of time scale. And you don't need to switch tools, and it's quite natural to be able to draw that. I don't think this is an example I can really demonstrate the difference, but let's try it. we'll see if this translates into something. I don't think it will, but let's zoom in here. Let's bring that to 0. Let's see if we can hear where that happens. I mean, it's single samples, so no, not really. You can hear it, but it can be a matter of something clicking or not. So let's return that to 0. Bad example. All right, so let's try this example, which doesn't have any reverb on it or anything, but it is essentially just some noise that I recorded from somewhere. It's in my library. And there's this sharp click here. Imagine that something like that would be disturbing to have in your sound, in your music. So let's just do a sample edit like this. We'll keep the low end, but should be able to remove that very sharp click right at the end. Or let's zoom in here a little bit more and let's bring it all the way down to silence here. It is a little tricky to like edit where you want and keep it all in the screen. So we're bringing that all the way down to 0. And remember, there's 48,000 samples per second, so it's a lot of individual points to draw. But that didn't take very much time at all, and we've completely gotten rid of that thump. And here, like, there's this sort of discontinuity, and we could do something like this. Smooth it out, and we'll see what happens. Again, this is a weird example, but it was the only thing that I had that I knew had clicks in it. And before we move on, let's check the action list for sample edit. We can toggle this. So let's go to the end here. This hard. And so toggling it is essentially your bypass button. If this is a tool that you'll be using a lot, I would suggest adding this to a toolbar button so it's a little easier to access than the menu. Automation. Support sample accurate wet-dry automation. Old automated wet-dry envelopes will have the new mode disabled by default, changeable via IO menu in Pin Mapper. All right, so let's just add in REEQ on this track, and this wet-dry control that you find on every plugin is now sample accurate in its automation. If you've already automated before this update, it will stay sounding the way that it did when you wrote that automation. But new automation envelopes will have this as a sample accurate mode, and we can change this in the IO button here and legacy non-sample accurate wet-dry processing. Actions. Add actions to increase peaks display 2x and decrease by 0.5x. Custom action editor. Do not pre-populate new custom actions with selected custom actions or rescripts. All right, so going into the action list, we've got new actions for peak display. Fastest way I've found to find this action is shift up arrow, which is my increase peaks display zoom for project. You know what that one looks like, right? That's this one. Hold it down to increase, hold down the down arrow to decrease. Well, now there's this increase peaks display zoom 2x for project. And so it's just like an instant doubling of the peaks. And 0.5x, just a quick pop in, zoom in, pop out, zoom out. This could be adding in option, down arrow. Let's try that. And increase up arrow. And so Option Shift up, now it's doubled, quadrupled, and back down to 0 or normal. So yeah, that's pretty neat. In the past, I might do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's kind of pretty close to doubling. So I might just do this now. Just a quick pop in, find that low level detail, pop back out to normal. Back in Reaper 6.13, they added this function that when you create a new custom action, the last thing that you select will automatically fill your first slot as custom action. Let's say if I had this action here selected, go to new custom action, it's going to have that selected. If you were finding that you're constantly having to remove the action, you might want to know that you can deselect anything by a command click on Mac or control click on Windows, and probably Linux it's the same. Yeah, just a control click will deselect anything, and then when you go to new action, it will bring up the custom action window and no pre-filled action. Now, what's new in this Reaper update is if you have a custom action selected or any rescript, and how this change came about. Somebody had made a custom action, immediately went to make another custom action, and the previous automatically selected custom action that was in the action list got put into their new custom action. They didn't like that. I agree with it, and it shouldn't be like that. So yeah, custom actions don't get put into new custom actions. It does stay selected, at least in the left-hand list, but it is not automatically added. So I think that's a good change. Mouse modifiers. Add envelope point mouse modifier to reset envelope points to default while dragging mouse. Add modifiers to move media item horizontally while enabling or disabling ripple editing. Add modifier to move media items horizontally. Right, so let me just add in a couple more tracks here. And let's put in a volume envelope, and we'll draw in some points like that. We're going to come over to mouse modifiers. And I think this is the new option here, reset envelope point to default value with Option Shift. I don't remember ever using that, but that's a good one. It doesn't delete the envelope point, but it just brings it back to the 0 point, the minimum, maximum, depending on the type of envelope that you're using. And for moving media items, let's go over to the media item. And this will also be available in the media item bottom half. And I actually set this up earlier. So holding Shift, I can move item horizontally, right? But if I try to drag down, it does not move until I release the Shift key, and then I can move it. And that was only on the bottom half of the item. If you're not using this, the media item bottom half, mouse modifier context, or they're all set to pass through, then you would just change this in here. So previously, we only had the move item vertically option, but it makes sense to lock it to horizontally as well, especially when maybe you've got a lot of tracks or very small items. Being able to constrain your movement to not shift things down to different lanes, or not to add new tracks or automation lanes, things like that. So being able to constrain the movement to only left and right when you need it, or only up and down when you need it, I think that's really cool and necessary. Let's go back to bottom half. And with this, you can also set this to ignoring the snap, ignoring time selection, with ripple edit for all tracks. Let's do horizontally, ignoring time selection, enabling, is that right? Ripple edit tracks and moving horizontally. And so let's split this into a couple of different. So if I go to move this, holding Shift from the bottom half of the item, I can move it horizontally and it's rippling, but I cannot move it across tracks. Without the mouse modifier, I can accidentally move it to the wrong track. Fixed lanes. Add actions to delete unsynced comp areas. Add preference to allow comping empty track space when changing source lane via action. After editing, delete unsynced comp areas that contain no media items in any lane. After editing, delete unsynced comp areas that refer to deleted lanes. So I've got a project here with a bit of fixed lane stuff here, but I don't know for sure if I can demonstrate this new stuff. So I'm comping, and let's take all this area, all this area. Let's come out of comping for a second, and let's color these items just so that they're different colors. Yeah, so I want this area, this area, this area. So when I delete this item from the comp track, it's removing the comped area down below. And let's try it without comping on. Let's delete this and go back into comping. Okay, so that empty area is gone now. It used to be that there would be an empty area like this one, kind of orphaned. I think this only happens when you're in this allow editing source media while comping option is on. There's also this scenario where you've got something that is out of sync from the comping area. Let's see if we can find that unsynced. Fixed lane, delete all unsynced comp areas. Delete unsynced comp areas in time selection. I don't have a time selection. Let's do that. Yeah. An unsynced comp area is where you've got the media in the comp lane that's moved away from the original position. So this item here is the same as this item, which was synced down here. But you can kind of see that there's a highlight of where there used to be a comp lane. If we run this action to delete all unsynced comp areas, that deletes the comp area that used to be here. And this item we can recomp from the source. And we kind of have an unsynced comp area there until we click again in it. That's probably not clear at all, but fixed lane stuff, it's complicated, and not every project will need these situations resolved, but these actions seem important to, solve a lot of problems. Effects. Add option to control whether effects UI is opened when dragging track item effects button to duplicate effects. Add option to limit effects floating windows to one at a time, with opt-out for monitoring master track, separate tracks. So let's go into the preferences and go to the plugins option. Allow only one floating effects at a time. Exclude the monitoring effects. Exclude the master effects. One per track. So let's try that out. One per track. Apply that. And so if I click on purple gate, that will bring up that one. If I click on TRS EQ73, that's hidden the other one. That is pretty cool. You might want to try that out. If you're looking for kind of a streamlined kind of workflow where you're only seeing like one plugin at a time, that might do it. Now that's one plugin per track. So you can still have two decapitators, but they have to be on separate tracks. So if we exclude the monitoring effects, we open up the monitoring effects, I can float a few things. Or I can turn that on, or turn off exclude monitoring effects, hit apply, and yeah. So that can hide these other plugins. Neat. All right, so let's come over to this effect. Let's add in something like, I don't know, read delay. If I drag and drop this effect from one media item to another, it brings up the effects chain for that new instance of the plugin. In these preferences, auto open UI after drag and drop entire effects chain. This seems like the one. So we're going to hit apply on that. Now let's try that again. So we're dragging this effects chain to another one, another track. It did not automatically do that, which is good. Frequently, I'm using that for things like RX declip, and I might get the settings where I want it, and then I copy that to another instance where I'm having a problem. And I don't want to individually edit that. I'm okay with opening up that plugin window when I need it. And by the way, if you've never noticed those buttons before, that's going to the appearance, media item buttons, and turning on per take effects and no effects. No effects is the one that you want so that the empty effects chain is always shown. System, add option in Preferences General to prevent OS screensaver screen blanking. Preferences, General, prevent OS screensaver or screen blanking when audio is active or when rendering. So when you're using the audio device or you're rendering, it's going to work like a full screen video player. You know, when you've got YouTube open and you're playing a video, your screensaver doesn't turn on. Now with Reaper, if you're recording and you're recording, your screensaver is not going to turn on. This is something I asked for, it feels like 10 years ago. It was probably only like 5 years ago, but there were a few times where I'm recording a podcast and I haven't touched anything for a long time, being good, not touching the keyboard and mouse, not getting distracted, and the screensaver comes on or my screen turns off, and I panic and I think my power's gone out and I think that I've stopped recording, and that's interrupted, that interrupts the flow. Sometimes you're loop recording guitar and it just takes a while, and maybe 15 minutes has gone by and your computer locks. That's kind of annoying to happen. So preventing that is now an option. That's awesome. But if you want your screensaver to turn on while you're using Reaper, you can uncheck that, and it will work how it's always worked. But I am going to check that. So that's what's new in Reaper 7.71. A lot of good stuff. I think I will be using a lot of these features. The sample editing, I will be trying, instead of just reaching for an automatic process like isotope declick, I'll be trying that, especially when there's only a couple spots where it's just like a slight mouth click, a random audio glitch, something like that. I'll be trying that before going for an automated process, and just see how it goes, because it's not part of my workflow. And I know that a lot of people had been using Audacity specifically for that function, and they're saying that they don't need that anymore. And I think that's a really cool thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that Audacity. It's great, but it's not like Reaper. It's a different tool. And I can see how that would be a huge pain to export your audio to just do one process and then have to send it back. I hate doing that. I rarely do that because it's not worth the effort for me. So we'll see. I like the new options for the effects windows, and I like the new preventing screensaver option. So it's all great stuff, things that I've wanted in the past. What's your favorite new feature added in this update? And if you missed any previous update videos, I've got a playlist going all the way back to 5.0, covering all the major changes. So many good tips in there. Highly recommend checking that out. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Blue Sky. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon. And visit reaper.blog for more tutorials.